Hello, I'm Nate, aka B-Tier Mutineer, and today in my B-Tier guides for Dragon Age Inquisition, I'm going to take you through a build guide for Varric Tethras, my favorite rogue companion in Inquisition. Varric is a bit special because he has a unique weapon, the crossbow named Bianca. Since it's a very important item to him, as an archer he only uses Bianca as a weapon and no other bow. So this build will focus on Varric as an expert crossbow wielding rogue, making his beloved Bianca the star of the show. As is always the case with my builds, I like to focus more on lore and character-friendly choices rather than the optimal min-maxing ones. For this reason, you'll see that I won't recommend extremely specific or overpowered crafted items. Inquisition's crafting system is broken, and if you abuse it to create the most overpowered items, it takes away from the fun and excitement of fighting enemies as well as finding cool new items while playing the game. So as part of the recommended gear section, I will give you the main stats I think are good for crafted items, but otherwise I'll also recommend various armor and accessories that fit Varric, which you can obtain by playing the game, not by grinding crafting materials. Do note that for Bianca to do enough damage and stay relevant throughout the whole game, you do need to add various upgrades to the crossbow. But the upgrades aren't very difficult to acquire. You can even buy or find some pre-made upgrades, though of course the ones you craft yourself are likely better because you can control which bonuses they grant. Without further ado, let's get into the build. At level 1, Varric starts with two abilities, Longshot from the archery tree and Caltrops from the sabotage tree. Longshot shoots a single bolt that delivers more damage the farther the rogue is from the target. This is a great starting ability because it does a big chunk of damage even if the archer isn't that far away. I believe there is also a bug with this ability that applies the Eagle Eye upgrade by default, adding an extra damage bonus at a greater range. Caltrops, on the other hand, is pretty bad. The rogue scatters spikes behind them, damaging and slowing enemies who walk over them. It's considered a trap for various abilities that enhance or affect traps, but I personally think this ability is a trap in the other sense of the word. It's just a waste of stamina. The party's tank should be taunting any enemies that try to attack their squishier allies, such as Varric. There are way better abilities to put on Varric's bar, so once you unlock a few abilities, you can absolutely disable Caltrops in his tactics. Let's go through which abilities and upgrades I recommend for Varric. I will mention them in a few categories based on the level ranges I think they should be unlocked at: early, mid, late, and super late. As a note, you don't need to force yourself to do a million side quests or grind respawning enemies to reach the max level 27. A character's power in Inquisition comes from gear as well as the strategic combination of a few key abilities. And anyway, if you're playing through all of the DLCs, you should be able to reach quite a high level. If you find you're constantly out-leveling enemies, I recommend switching on the Even Ground trial, which causes all enemies to scale to be at least the same level as the Inquisitor. Let's start with what I recommend for the early game, until level 7, or that time you hunt rams, search for blankets, and get an asthma potion in the hinterlands, even though there are demons pouring out of rifts that only you can close, and the Inquisition soldiers are just standing around in camps instead of helping. I recommend focusing on the archery tree to get some good damaging abilities that Varric can use often. There is one ability I recommend you stay away from, Leaping Shot, which causes the rogue to leap backwards when shooting an arrow. This ability has only had disastrous results for me, as Varric used it and fell off a hill or cliff many times, took fall damage, and either fell unconscious or had to use a potion due to his own stupidity. It's not worth the headache. So just ignore that left side of the tree and unlock these abilities instead. The First Blood passive, Explosive Shot, the Pincushion passive, Full Draw, the Chain Reaction upgrade for Explosive Shot, and the Stunning Shot upgrade for Full Draw. First Blood is a passive that grants a 15% damage bonus when shooting enemies that are over 80% health, and a +3 to Dexterity. Explosive Shot fires a powerful bolt that explodes on impact, damaging the target and the other enemies around it. This is my favorite archer ability due to having Area of Effect or AoE damage. It's always great for as many characters in your party to have some way of affecting multiple enemies at once, whether with damage or some crowd control effects such as Taunt, Fear, Stun, Slow, Sleep, or Poison. Pincushion is a passive that grants a +5% damage bonus for each consecutive hit on the same target, and a +3 to Dexterity. While First Blood gave you an initial boost to your damage, Pincushion is better when fighting enemies with more health and armor, as the more Varric shoots them, the more damage he will do with each shot. Full Draw is the big single target damaging ability, as it does a full 800% weapon damage as a baseline, plus if you use it on an enemy that is full health, it also has a damage bonus of 800%. This is a great starting ability for Varric to use on either a powerful enemy you want to take out as quickly as possible, such as an assassin or mage, or a tanky enemy that has a lot of armor and HP. Of course, it may be difficult to get the full HP bonus if you don't micromanage your party, because if a different party member damages the target's health before Varric gets to hit it with Full Draw, the 800% bonus will no longer apply. Still, even just the base damage is very good, so don't worry, you can let Varric use this on his own if you want. Chain Reaction is the upgrade I recommend for Explosive Shot, because it fills the air with shrapnel and the explosion deals 25% more damage per target for a maximum of 100%. Stunning Shot is the upgrade I recommend for Full Draw, because it knocks the enemy unconscious for 20 seconds, aka puts them to sleep. Any type of disabling effect is great to have, because you can combo it with your companions. For example, Cassandra could use her Spell Purge ability as an Eldritch Detonator on the enemy slept by Varric's Full Draw, and cause the Nightmare combo, which deals a large amount of spirit damage as well as inflicting panic on the target. Or she could use Shield Bash as an Impact Detonator, causing the Rupture combo, which inflicts a large damage bonus to the target with a duration. As you can see, disabling effects are incredibly powerful to create combos with your team, so I highly recommend being on the lookout for abilities with such effects. Let's move on to the mid-game abilities, from level 8 to 15, while you walk very slowly through the snow, save an Empress or let her be assassinated, as well as a bunch of other very heroic stuff like walking through zombie-infested water to loot dead bodies. At this point, Varric has 3 solid damaging abilities from the archery tree, so we want to find ways to increase his damage as well as any other effects he can apply to enemies. For this reason, we'll focus on the Sabotage and Subterfuge trees. From the Sabotage tree, we want to unlock poisoned weapons and then get to Toxic Cloud. From the Subterfuge tree, we're interested in Stealth and to get to Knockout Powder. The order in which you unlock these is up to you. If you feel that Varric is relatively safe from harm and the party's tank is doing their job, then he doesn't need Stealth early, so you can get more damage and AoE from the Sabotage tree first. If you feel, however, that you have enough damage for now, or Varric is getting hit by enemies a bit too often, then the Subterfuge tree with Stealth is a better first choice. My personal choice is more damage because I use Cassandra as the tank and Varric always stands far enough back that he doesn't really get hurt. Poisoned Weapons is an activated ability that coats your bolts with poison and gives a 25% damage bonus for a short time. Fighting Dirty is a passive that makes Sunder and poison effects last 25% longer, as well as grants +3 dexterity. Explosive Toxin is a passive that makes enemies that die while poisoned explode in a shower of toxic mist, dealing 50% weapon damage per second to enemies in a 3-meter radius. It also grants +3 dexterity. Toxic Cloud creates a toxic dust cloud that damages all enemies in the area. It's a great AoE damaging ability, especially with the following upgrade. Contact Poison is the upgrade I recommend for Toxic Cloud, which reduces the cooldown of Toxic Cloud by 5 seconds, applies the poisoned effect to enemies in its area, and causes them to take an additional 25% weapon damage per second. Stealth is an activated ability that causes the rogue to step into the shadows, essentially invisible to enemies. Attacking from stealth gives them a damage bonus and makes them visible. Dealing damage to enemies reduces the ability's cooldown. Easy to Miss is a passive that reduces the rogue's threat by 25% and by 100% if they are flanking an enemy, which means the enemy is less likely to attack them. It also grants +3 cunning. Finally, Knockout Powder is an ability that can put enemies in an area to sleep by throwing a dosed dust in their face. This ability applies the disabling effect Sleep, which, as I've mentioned previously, can be used with various other ally abilities for powerful combos. Even without the combos, it's always great to take an enemy out of the fight for a while. Moving on to the late game from level 16 to 23, while you'll mess around exploring and doing all sorts of side quests, gathering shards and mosaics while putting off saving the world. You may notice that I haven't mentioned Varric's specialization, Artificer, until now, even though specialization abilities become available at level 11. Well, that's because it kind of sucks. There are some passives in the tree that help Varric and the party, but the active abilities are things I never use. I know some people abuse Fallback Plan to do speedrunning strats and stuff like that, but that has never been the way I play the game and thus never the way I create my builds. Due to the fact that there are 2 good passives in the tree, I will recommend putting a few points in the specialization tree, but I will leave them for the super late game. In the meantime, here are the good late game abilities. Shadow Strike is an activated ability that launches a surprise attack on an enemy. If you strike an enemy that did not have the rogue targeted, the rogue regains stamina. Long Shadows is the upgrade I recommend for Shadow Strike because it allows the rogue to use Shadow Strike against ranged targets, which is very important for Varric as he prefers to remain at a safe distance from enemies while still damaging them. At this point, you'll have 9 active abilities unlocked, so I recommend removing Caltrops from the active bar and replacing it with Shadow Strike. Though, of course, I hope Caltrops was already disabled from much earlier since it's a waste of stamina. Speaking of stamina, Looked Like It Hurt is a passive that restores 10 stamina whenever the rogue scores a critical hit and grants +3 cunning. Stamina regeneration is always great to have so that the character can use their abilities more often, and Varric should crit quite a lot, so you'll get a lot of stamina regeneration with this passive. Cheap Shot is a passive that causes the rogue's critical hits to sunder enemy armor for a short time and also grants +3 cunning. The in-game description says 6 seconds, but the sunder armor duration is actually 12 seconds. Infected Wounds is the upgrade I recommend for poisoned weapons because it increases the damage done while this mode is active by 25%. Lost in the Shadows is the upgrade I recommend for stealth because it removes any debilitating effects the rogue suffered from when they enter stealth, and they are also able to pass through enemies undetected. Evasion is a passive that grants a 10% chance to dodge enemy attacks and thus take no damage, and grants +3 dexterity. Rude Awakening is the upgrade I recommend for Knockout Powder, as the other upgrade seems to be bugged. This upgrade causes the sleep duration to be shorter by 5 seconds, but makes enemies take massive damage, 600% weapon damage, if they wake up naturally, aka without being damaged by someone while sleeping. If you prefer to keep the longer duration of sleep of Knockout Powder, you can of course skip this upgrade. Finally, we come to the super late game, from levels 24 to 27, or when you're likely doing the various DLCs and possibly getting your heart broken in Trespasser if you like eggs. Here is where I'm putting the 4 points into Varric specialization, though only 2 of them are useful, the passives Opportunity Knocks and Tricks of the Trade. If you don't want to get these, you're free to get some more passives or upgrades from the other trees. You could get the Archer Lance upgrade for your long shot, as well as the other 2 passives from the Archer tree, and a passive from Sabotage or Subterfuge. Opportunity Knocks is a passive that reduces Varric's cooldowns whenever an ally critically hits. You'll need to get Spike Trap in order to gain access to it. It's pretty good since reduced cooldowns will help Varric use his abilities more often, but it also requires you to have another crit-based damager on your team, such as a dual-wielding rogue or a two-handed warrior or a second archer. Tricks of the Trade is a passive that increases the damage and duration of all status effects the party applies by 10%, as well as grants +3 willpower. This passive is really very powerful, which makes the fact that it's at the very bottom of the tree make sense, but also very annoying. You'll need to unlock Fallback Plan to gain access to it. As is the case with any build in my opinion, once you've reached the super late game, you should already have your key abilities unlocked, as well as have good gear equipped that enhances your character's abilities well enough to not have any issues, so the last points are just the icing on the cake. Speaking of good gear, let's discuss Bianca. Varric starts out with this crossbow from the beginning, so you'll notice that its base damage is only 45. However, it has 3 upgrade slots which you can use to increase its base damage, as well as various stats such as crit chance, crit damage, and useful attributes in order to make Varric more powerful in battle. It also has a rune slot, which can be useful to fill later on in Skyhold when you gain access to rune crafting or if you find one as loot. As I've said, I think Bianca is an important part of Varric's character, and Varric refuses to use any other bow as an archer, so let's talk about how you can improve his crossbow. There are 3 slots for Bianca upgrades: arms, aiming modules, and grips. You can either use upgrades for these slots that you find as loot or purchase from merchants, or you can craft upgrades based on schematics, which are rewards from quests, loot, or purchasable from merchants. I won't mention where you can find each and every upgrade because we'd be here all day, but I will let you know what the easiest things to acquire are, as well as the ones that stand out in some way. The stats you care about for Bianca's upgrades are critical chance, critical damage, and attack, and in terms of attributes, dexterity, which increases attack and critical damage, and cunning, which increases critical chance. Ideally, you want to get as close to 100% crit chance if you can, but don't stress if you can't. Just get as high of a crit chance as is possible for you. Optionally, stagger on hit can be a good secondary stat because it gives you a chance to stun the target. The most important upgrade by far is the arms slot because it increases Bianca's base damage while also adding other bonuses. The most basic arms upgrade you can get are the Bianca arms tier 1 to tier 6, which add base damage and bonuses to attack and critical damage. There are also 2 special arms upgrades, but they require Jaws of Hakan and Trespasser, so they are only relevant if you play through the DLCs. You can purchase the Tier 1 Bianca arms from Segret in Haven or the Crossroads merchant in the Hinterlands. It's a great early upgrade to purchase as soon as you get to Haven while you don't have many crafting materials to make something better yourself. The Tier 2 to Tier 6 Bianca arms are most easily obtained by purchasing them from Bonnie Sims in Skyhold, likely available depending on your character's level. However, my recommendation is that from Tier 2 onwards you mainly craft Bianca arms because the crafts are better than the pre-made ones. If you want to craft Bianca arms, you'll need schematics. You can purchase Bianca Arms Tier 1 schematics from Segret in Haven. An enhanced Tier 1 schematic can be looted from a dwarven corpse found inside Ash Warrior's Refuge in the Hinterlands that you visit as part of the Open a Vein side quest. Bianca Arms Tier 2 and Tier 3 schematics can be purchased from Bonnie Sims in Skyhold. The enhanced Tier 2 schematic can be acquired by unlocking the Rogue Schematics Inquisition perk. The enhanced Tier 3 schematic can be looted from a chest in the Dwarven Tomb near the Sand Crags camp in the Hissing Wastes. The grip slot is the second best upgrade for Bianca because the basic ones increase Varric's cunning score, which increases his critical chance. And if you craft a Bianca grip, you can add both dexterity and cunning to increase Varric's attack, crit chance, and crit damage all at once. The earliest pre-made grip is the sturdy Bianca grip, which grants +3 cunning. You can purchase it from Segret in Haven or the Crossroads merchant in the hinterlands. As with the tier 1 arms, I highly recommend buying this as soon as you're able because it's a good and cheap early improvement. Other than this, however, I recommend crafting Bianca grips since the ones you can purchase from Bonnie Sims and Skyhold only grant +7 or +8 cunning, which isn't that impressive. For crafted Bianca grips, they all have the utility property for the material they're made out of, which means increasing the character's attributes related to that material. Leather increases dexterity, cunning, or both, so I recommend only crafting the grips made out of leather. I prefer a mix of dexterity and cunning for my grips, but it depends on what your highest tier leather material does. The higher tier material is more important since it gives you more total points. You can loot a tier 1 Masterwork Sturdy Bianca grip schematic from a corpse located at the campsite just outside of Valimar in the hinterlands. You can purchase the tier 2 Ornate Bianca grip and the tier 3 Firm Bianca grip schematics from Bonnie Sims and Skyhold. You can also get the same schematics as rewards for completing hard and Hightown war table operations, the A Worthy Dwarf one with Josephine or Liliana, and the No Dwarf Less Worthy operation with Liliana or Cullen. The tier 3 Masterwork Firm Bianca grip schematic is a reward for completing the Exalted Plains side quest map of Halin Sulan. Finally, aiming modules are the third best upgrade because the base ones only offer a small bonus to critical chance. I wouldn't say the basic ones are worth purchasing, so stick to crafted aiming modules. This type of upgrade uses the offense property of the crafting material, so both leather and metal are fine, though leather is preferred because it can add crit chance and crit damage, whereas metal is mainly good for the attack bonus and optionally stagger on hit. The Bianca Aiming 1 schematic can be purchased from Segret in Haven. It's the only metal-based aiming upgrade, but it's a good early game craft because you can give Varric a bonus to attack. Crit chance and crit damage become worth it later in the game when you can get bigger bonuses. The enhanced Bianca Aiming 1 schematic can be looted from a chest in an unmarked dwarven mine east of the Hessarian camp on the Storm Coast. You can also find the unique shield Schaefer's Rampart in this mine, which is great for a weapon and shield tank, so it's even more worth it to go there. The tier 2 and tier 3 Bianca Aiming schematics can be purchased from Bonnie Sims and Skyhold. The enhanced tier 2 Bianca Aiming schematic can be looted from the Gamordian Stormrider High Dragon in the Exalted Plains, or it's also a reward for completing the war table operation the Arcanist and the Fade with any advisor. The enhanced tier 3 Bianca Aiming schematic can be looted from a chest within the Tomb of Firel during the Hissing Waste side quest, the Tomb of Firel. In terms of armor, the stats you're looking to increase are dexterity, cunning, and for defensive stats, focus on a higher base armor score, maximum health, and optionally the 3 general types of defenses, melee, ranged, and magic. Melee defense is the least important out of the 3 since Varric should be mostly at a safe distance. There are some good rare armors you can find as loot or purchase from merchants, such as those with Carta in their name, which are specifically equipable by dwarves, or those with Scout, Hunter, or Prowler in their name. Similar to my Cassandra guide, if you aren't crafting armors, then I recommend to be on the lookout for any rare medium armors you find in case they're better than the current one Varric is wearing. There are a few standout unique armors. The Masterwork Scout armor requires level 8 and can be purchased from the Redcliffe Armor and Upgrades merchant in the Hinterlands, or obtained as a reward for completing the sketch of Anavoris River in the Exalted Plains. It grants dexterity, ranged defense, sunder when hit, and abilities cost 10% less stamina if not being hit for 5 seconds. It has arms and legs upgrades available. The Masterwork Prowler armor requires level 19 and can be looted from the Kaltenzan High Dragon in Emprise du Lion and grants bleed on being hit, dexterity, ranged defense, and abilities cost 20% less stamina if not being hit for 5 seconds. It also has arms and legs upgrades available. There are a few other good unique armors, but they're either randomly available at merchants if you have the shortlist Inquisition perk or otherwise require one of the DLCs. For crafted armors, you'll need schematics. I recommend schematics with Carta, Scout, Hunter, or Prowler in the name, just like with found armors. Be careful not to craft Adventurer armor, Free Army Scout armor, or Legion Army Scout armor, or Dalish Scout armor for Varric, as these are only equipable by humans or elves. I like to look specifically for an armor schematic that has a lot of leather used in the utility slot to add dexterity and cunning, or a lot of metal used in the defense slot to add maximum health. For armor upgrades, non-crafted arms tend to have either cunning or defenses on them. I recommend using the cunning ones to increase Varric's crit chance. The non-crafted legs are shittier because they only have various defenses or bonuses to willpower, so I recommend crafting leg upgrades. Same as with the armors themselves, for the arms and legs upgrades, I recommend leather in the utility slot and metal in the defense slot. Almost forgot about helmets because they're so ugly. Honestly, helmets don't offer all that much since they're quite a small piece of gear, so the best thing you can get is one with leather in the utility slot so that Varric can gain some extra dexterity and cunning. Otherwise, if you can only find or craft something with defensive stats, be on the lookout for health or the defenses I mentioned. Moving on to accessories. Belts are among the weakest equipable items in my opinion. For rogues, the best ones either add to maximum health or have bonuses to melee, ranged, or magic defense. The maximum health belts are good on everyone, since more HP protects you from all kinds of damage, not just one type, as is the case with defenses and resistances. You can purchase a common belt of health from Barnabas in Val Royeaux, or find it as random loot. Same thing goes for the belts of magic and ranged defense. The rare Enhanced Belt of Health can be found as random loot, rewarded upon completing the Contact Hero Ferelden War Table operation with Liliana, or looted from the Mercenary Leader in the Grand Forest Villa in the Hinterlands. Amulets are more useful than belts, so keep an eye out for anything that can help Varric either offensively, such as bonuses to cunning, dexterity, crit chance, and cooldown, or defensively with reduced threat generation or dodge chance. As part of doing various quests and war table operations, you can also obtain Amulets of Power for your companions, which are single-use items that grant the character an ability point. Varric's 2 amulets are the easiest to procure, since they just require you to follow the Hard and Hightown war table operation questline. Rings are pretty powerful for rogues, especially the ones that increase crit chance and crit damage. Those are the highest priority. As a secondary priority, especially in the early and mid-game when critical hits are not so common, I recommend rings that enhance the damage or duration of a specific ability. The best ones increase the damage of explosive shot and long shot, or the duration of poisoned weapons. All the ability enhancement rings are random loot, however, so no issues if you don't find them. Super early on, if the crit chance and crit damage bonuses are too small, try to find rings with bonuses to attack. You can replace them later with more powerful rare or unique rings that have crit chance or crit damage. If you do want to occasionally control Varric, then for his potion slot, I recommend adding a grenade such as the pitch grenade, which slows enemies in an area, or if you want to help your allies, the healing mist grenade, which creates a small healing mist in the target area that instantly heals allies within it. I don't believe companions will use these secondary potions on their own, so you'll likely have to switch to Varric to use it yourself when you want to, but that's probably better since you can only carry 3 such grenades at once. As a final little note, if you enjoy the effect of these grenades and want to carry more, you could equip Varric with a grenades belt that allows him to carry 1 or more extra grenades based on the rarity of the belt. Let's move on to tactics, where I discuss which abilities to set to preferred, which ones to just keep as active, and which ones to disable in a character's tactics. Unfortunately, that's the extent of Inquisition's tactics menu, so I can't recommend more in-depth ways to set a character's combat behavior. Caltrops should be disabled as soon as you have 2 or 3 archery abilities unlocked, since at that point you have much better things to spend your stamina on than throwing some spiky shit on the ground next to Varric. Longshot can stay as an active ability, but it doesn't need to be preferred. It's good damage, but the other abilities are better. Shadow Strike is in the same boat as Longshot. Keep it active since it can do a good amount of damage, but it doesn't pack as much of a punch as the other abilities. Full Draw should be active because while it's great in certain situations, Varric will likely not use it to its full potential on his own. If you want to ensure it's used properly, you'd have to take control of Varric and either use it at the beginning of a fight against a full health enemy, or use it on an enemy for the sleep effect to combo it. In case you're alright with controlling Varric for a bit in these situations, it's better to set this ability to disabled, since it has a pretty high cooldown and you don't want to have to wait around for it to be up. Stealth is a special case. I recommend keeping it on active and seeing how well Varric uses it. If he uses it well, he can get some good damage bonuses while he attacks an enemy from stealth. If you think the AI doesn't use stealth well, however, disable it. Poisoned weapons should be active, as it adds extra damage to all of Varric's attacks. It's good, but things that do AoE damage or add status effects to enemies are better. Explosive Shot should be set to preferred. It's a good AoE damage ability that has a low cooldown, so you want Varric to use it a lot. Toxic Cloud is also a preferred ability because it adds the poisoned effect to enemies and does AoE damage. Finally, Knockout Powder should be preferred because it puts enemies to sleep, which is a useful status effect for combos, and with the Rude Awakening upgrade, it will also do a huge amount of damage to them if they wake up on their own. In conclusion, Varric is a powerful damaging archer using his unique weapon, the crossbow Bianca. I think he excels at dealing AoE damage and inflicting status effects on enemies that his allies can take advantage of, making combos possible. But he also has a few mighty single-target abilities that are very useful in fights against big bosses. Varric is my favorite rogue to take along on my Inquisitor's adventures, mainly because I really like Bianca's design, and I'm always a sucker for unique items or abilities that change the way a character looks like in the game. Bows are cool and all, but I always found it strange that rogues use them because in real life shooting arrows requires a lot of strength, so it makes much more sense to me that rogue archers would use crossbows. And because of that, I think Varric is a perfect example of a rogue archer in the Dragon Age universe. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this build guide for Varric Tethras in Dragon Age Inquisition. If you're looking forward to seeing more of my Dragon Age and RPG videos, do remember to subscribe and leave a like and comment while you're at it too. They really help. This has been B Tier Mutineer. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.